As you might imagine, it's very common to write code that needs to iterate over an entire container or range. We can do this with for loops. Let's say we had a vector of doubles called v, and we wanted to print out every element in the vector. Here's what that loop would look like. We start at index 0, and we increment the index for each iteration of our loop. And we stop when the index equals the size of our vector. In the body of the loop, we can get the current element by passing that index to either the square brackets or the @ function. This style of loop works perfectly fine, but as our code and containers get more complicated, it can be easy to introduce subtle mistakes with this setup. There's another style of for loops available in C++ that makes it easier to iterate over a complete range. This is called a range-based for loop. And here's what it looks like. Instead of the 3 expressions that defined our original for loop, we now have 2 separated by a colon. The part on the left declares the variable that will hold the current element for each iteration. The part on the right is the container over which we are looping. So the body of this loop will run once for each element in our vector, and the elem variable will be set to the current element for each of those runs. Under the hood, this style of loop is using iterators, so we can give it any object as the container as long as that object provides the begin and end functions we talked about last time. It's also worth noting we can use the const and auto keywords here. The auto keyword will tell the compiler to figure out the type of the elements for us, and we can mark this variable const as this is just a read-only loop through the container. This range-based for loop syntax is super convenient and a good tool to reach for when you're writing an algorithm that loops over a whole container.